A short while ago I spoke to the Queensland Premier Anna Bligh in our Brisbane studio. Anna Bligh, can you give us the latest information you have on the situation in Queensland tonight?
Well, thank you. We're really still in the middle of an unfolding disaster. We have some towns and cities now starting the heartbreaking business of clean-up and recovery, while we're still in response mode in places like Rockhampton, St George and in that southwest area. So we still have some towns bracing for more floods, while others are starting the clean-up. As we turn to recovery, there's certainly some big logistical issues. The City of Emerald, for example, we flew 13 tonnes of cleaning equipment and disinfectant in there this morning, and they need more. So that's just one town. We are also seeing a lot of issues around supply of food and other goods and materials. The highway is cut at Rockhampton. Rockhampton is now completely stranded, a town of 75,000 people, no airport, rail or road. That means not only is the supply issues there for Rockhampton, but of course towns like Mackay, Townsville and Cairns that are north of there. So the Australian Defence Force this morning started flights with C-130s out of Amberley to resupply food, taking it into Mackay and then driving it down into Rockhampton. Keeping these towns supplied while they are cut off is one of our main priorities right now.
You've recalled the Queensland Cabinet. What will be at the top of the agenda when you get together?
While we are still in response mode in places like Rockhampton, where we don't expect to see the peak of these floodwaters till Wednesday, we are starting to see the recovery begin. The purpose of the Cabinet meeting, I'll be recalling ministers, is to start the rebuilding process as quickly as possible. I don't want to wait for all of the waters to go down before we start all of the assessments on roads and bridges and the rebuilding task. Our job is to rebuild regional Queensland, and that's what we're going to do.
Now, what's the latest on financial assistance available? Because there's been some news on small businesses and primary producers. What's available for them?
On the weekend, the Prime Minister and I reached an agreement about a new level of assistance known as Category C that gives small businesses and primary producers access to grants of up to $25,000 to get them back on their feet as quickly as possible. What that will mean for a lot of graziers, for example, in central Queensland, is that they can, with confidence, start to do fodder drops to stranded cattle, so that they know that they'll have some financial backing to do that. But we know there are now probably thousands of small businesses that have not been open for 10 days. Many of them are not going to be open, able to open their businesses and get back to work for several more weeks. They're a big employer in the Queensland economy, and we want to see them back on their feet as quickly as we can.
What sort of challenges are presented by the fact that some of the people who are in evacuation centres, even when they can go back to their homes, they may not be able to move into them? So this could go on for not just days but weeks.
Oh, I expect to see this unfold up for months, frankly. Once the water goes down, there is still a lot of work to be done. People cannot go back into their homes until they've been certified as safe by an electrician, for obvious reasons. But they will then need, if they've been inundated, to have those homes often rebuilt completely from the inside. These are wooden Queenslanders, old homes in many cases. They'll need to have their walls stripped, their kitchens replaced, otherwise it would all be mould. So there's a lot of work, and it's a big rebuilding program, and some of them, you're right, will not be back in their homes for months.
The focus is obviously on handling this current crisis, but do you think that down the track there will be a discussion about whether any of these towns could be better protected for an event like this in the future?
Some of these towns are seeing events that are either without precedent or a 1 in 100 year flood level. In our environment, we have to accept that there will be, from time to time, these sorts of disasters, and every time we have one, we learn from it. A lot of the reason why I think we're seeing a great effort out there on the ground is some of the learnings we got from Cyclone Larry and some of the subsequent disasters we've dealt with since Cyclone Larry. I should say we've also passed new legislation here in Queensland this year that unequivocally outlines a chain of command that gives authority in the first instance on the ground to police. in far-flung places in Queensland, and we're the most regionalised state, it's only the police who have a 24-hour presence. It's making a remarkable difference on the ground, and it's the first time we've seen that legislation in use, and that's as a result of learning from the past. The other interesting thing about this disaster is it's the first time we've seen on a large scale use of the SMS emergency alert system, where people are getting messages on their mobile phones telling them which streets are affected in their town, when the highway is open or cut, and it's giving people information immediately, because some of them aren't even able to access radio information. So it's interesting to see that working so well, and that was one of the national responses, and Queensland's seeing it work live on the ground.
As this crisis has gone on and got worse, do you think that any of those involved have felt overwhelmed? Because it's a very, very big problem now.
Managing fatigue in our frontline people in a disaster like this is a number one priority. We welcomed today SES replacements from Victoria, and we thank them for that. We also welcomed disaster coordination experts from New South Wales who are relieving our central coordination unit. These are people who have been on the job, most of them are full-time since Christmas Day. We still need a lot of good and strategic decision making out there, so we do need to refresh people, and other states are coming to our aid in that regard. I think that's a great thing about how Australians respond to these sorts of events, and I thank the other states and their premiers for their willingness to help so generously and enthusiastically.
In hindsight, do you think it was the right thing to do to leave your troubled state of Queensland and come to Sydney on the weekend?
My family are holidaying in Sydney, and I have to make these decisions on a regular basis, juggling home and family responsibilities with my responsibilities. I was actually working most of the weekend while I was in Sydney, and there's actually a great news story out of Rockhampton where we're trying very hard to keep supplies into the city, but we had a challenge to get supplies out. We have pineapple growers with 500 tonnes of pineapples, the only pineapples available for most of the southern markets. And after a lot of work on the weekend, including between myself and the local member up there, we're getting those pineapples out tonight. So southern markets will have pineapples, lychees and mangoes. That is important, because if we lose all of that crop, it drives prices up for everybody. So I was working on the weekend, and my family generally comes second. On this occasion, I spend a day with them, but I'm back on board and I won't be back on leave.
And just finally, in terms of industry, any update on the impact on your very important Queensland industry?
We know now that we have 3/4 of all of our coal fields unable to operate and unable to supply markets. There is likely to be a significant long-term effect of that, and not only nationally but internationally. Queensland supplies half of the world's coking coal needed in steel manufacture. So there is a remarkable problem out there in the mining industry. The mining companies and the mining communities are all playing their role in trying to help the recovery effort, and I thank them for that, but they will have a long, slow climb back to full production. The tourism industry, of course, very hard hit. Some agricultural sectors doing very, very poorly, losing entire crops. Until these waters go down, it's going to be hard, I think, to really fully assess the long-term economic and social impact. But there's no doubt that it's not just a one-off week-long event. This is an event that will have a ripple effect across Queensland, Australia, and in some parts of the international region for many months to come.
Anna Bligh, thanks for speaking to us.
Thank you.